Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode number 2 of the Wholehearted Healing Podcast with Jo. I am excited today to talk to you about the nervous system. This one's like a big, this is a big influence on healing, and I'm going to kind of go through that. So today we're going to talk about kind of why the nervous system is so important with healing, and kind of some ways that you can start to shift and change and improve kind of your nervous system regulation. So we're going to kind of ways that you can work on your nervous system. So there will be a little bit of takeaway from this outside of just the information and the knowledge, and we'll kind of go through that at the end with ways that you can work with your nervous system in a positive way. So before we kind of get started, I guess I will dive into the housekeeping things. So first, because obviously this is only the second episode, but these are coming out a couple days apart. So I don't really plan on keeping a consistent schedule in the sense of a very routine, every Thursday kind of thing, of how these episodes come out. These are going to kind of be coming out when I feel called to kind of share things and when I feel like they're kind of ready to be expressed. So again, they'll kind of just be coming up here and there. You guys can follow me on Instagram, which is johanna.padalino. I usually have my handle in the comment section or the notes description of the episode, so you can find that there. But that's kind of where I'll be posting a new episode is up. Obviously, if depending on which device and what system you're kind of listening to on, then you may get notifications and that sort of thing as well. But you can see my Instagram for updates in that sense. Now the other thing is we have a couple days left before I do my live webinar happening on Tuesday, February 20th, 2024. So this is mindful healing. It's a holistic approach to transforming women's health. So the nervous system is actually a big piece of kind of that, what I'm going to be talking about as well. But there's going to be lots of other things in there too. So definitely sign up for that. There will be a free replay if you can't make the time. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. So definitely sign up and you can get the replay if you can't make that time, because I know I have quite a few people from different time zones. But also if you're there live, or if you can make it live, you will have the opportunity to ask me questions about your health and your healing and stuff, or any questions that you have just in general with what I've obviously presented at the end of that webinar. So definitely check that out. The link for the sign up is also in the description box, and make sure that you confirm your subscription. There will be once you submit your email, then you will get an email saying that you have to confirm your email. And this will allow you to get all the emails about the link and as well the replay. So make sure you do that. And then the third thing is that my Mindful Woman program, my 12-week program, is open right now. There are spaces available. So that is a 12-week journey where we kind of really hone in specifically on what it is that you need, and things that you can change or improve upon, or what needs to maybe be looked at for your health, where we really kind of shift to manage and deal with your long-term symptoms, to work on obviously getting rid of them, but taking a more holistic approach. We kind of leave that open. There's things, again, the nervous system is a big piece, but there's things that we go through in that program to identify, okay, which system are we kind of looking at here? And then, it's all unique to what you need. So it is very much a one-on-one container. The calls are group calls, but you have one-on-one access to me throughout the week through text and voice chat. So if you're interested in that, the link for that is also in the show notes. So that is pretty much it when it comes to housekeeping things. Let's kind of dive into the nervous system. And I have some things that I want to touch on, obviously, but this is going to be kind of a little bit of just whatever kind of comes up or feels like it needs to kind of come out of me at this moment. So the nervous system is vitally important when it comes to our healing. And there's a lot of people talking about nervous system work, actually, which is wonderful. However, I feel like a lot of people are kind of just like more so scratching the surface. And I feel like, especially on social media, like people just really want the X's and O's, like how do I do it? And while that's beneficial and can give you short-term relief, at times it's not really fixing the true essence of the problem, right? So it was interesting. I was listening to, I guess you could call him a mentor, someone who he's deceased now, he's passed on, but through my osteopathic training, he has created this approach called biodynamics. And I took a course on this in October, and I plan on continuing it because it's very much in alignment with how I view things. But I was listening to one of his audio sessions, and he was talking about how, healing is there's like a tree, right? And we have branches, we have the tree trunk, and then we have like the seed in which it came from, right? And it's in the earth, and kind of that more beginning stages of how it grows. And so I feel like the X's and O's of just like, do this to calm your nervous system is very much like the branches. It's kind of like, again, managing the symptoms, but not really getting to the root of why we have the symptoms in the first place. And so as much as I feel like nervous system is definitely a root cause, it's also kind of not. And I say that because we have to figure out what is actually dysregulating the nervous system, right? Like, why are you in this state nervous system wise to begin with? And that's really the problem, or the root of what's going on. And then you use the nervous system to reprogram, re-regulate your system. So you use the nervous system as a tool. And the great part is we can adapt our nervous system through breath work and all these other practices, right? We can actually influence it, which is really cool and really helpful. And I think it's really helpful for immediate, kind of relief. But again, if we want these things to not be coming up for us, then we have to really look at like why we're in that situation in the first place. And so in my osteopathic practice, a few years ago, I really started to obviously incorporate treatment pieces with regards to the nervous system. It became one of the first things that I kind of looked at. But it also, I would talk to clients about, where, like, do they have stress? How do they identify with stress? Because there's this interesting piece where a lot of people think that they're like not stressed, which if you live in the Western world, there's no way you're not stressed. You know what I mean? You're stressed about something. And it might be really mundane. It doesn't have to be like this crazy thing. But there's stress, right? Like we do not live in I wouldn't say a very healthy society, in just how our everyday is functioning. And there's different types of stress. There's mental stress, there's emotional stress, there's physical stress, and there is spiritual stress. And people always think stress is like, oh, I have to be stressed about something like in my mind, right? Like, oh, my mind's not wandering, my mind's not going, a weird direction with things. Like, it's not like it's racing or anything that. Some people obviously do have that. I think it's becoming more prevalent. But if you have any sort of physical symptoms, like your body is under stress, right? Your body is in distress. It's signaling to you like, I need help. I have something going on. And so I find it fascinating that, people come into my office and they're like, no, I'm not stressed. And I'm like, you're literally here for a pain or a symptom, right? Like your body is calling out to you. Your body is under some sort of stress. Now, stress isn't always bad. Anytime we exercise, we stress our body. Anytime we, are competitive in a positive way, we are stressing ourselves. Anytime we have to really critically think about something, we're stressing the mind, right? Anytime we go through life challenges, as much as they obviously could be challenging and maybe don't seem positive in that moment, we learn lessons through them. Like that is a stress, right? Emotionally, we can go through stresses, right? We go through highs and lows emotions and different emotions. And again, those aren't bad. Those are the things that make us human. But what happens is when we're chronically in this state of stress, we are now in this perpetual state of dysregulation. So you're always high in the nervous system state, which would be the sympathetic state, and you don't come down into this parasympathetic state, or you have a really hard time doing it. It's like you lose the adaptation, you lose the ability to it's kind of like your mobility, right? Like if you're stiff and stuck and always in like a tightened state and you're never like stretching and trying to open up your body and be free, it's like you lose the ability to move in some ways, right? To go back and forth between those two states. And so we can train our system. That's the positive piece, is we can always shift this, we can always change this. So in our Western world, we are so fast-paced, we're so overstimulated, we're so just not present, and that prevents us from being able to properly rest and regulate ourselves, even if we're doing a quote-unquote restful task like sleeping. The amount of people that I, again, see that don't have good sleep patterns and like they think it's fine because they're like, yeah, I'm in my bed from, blank time to blank time. But it's like, yeah, but are you waking up? Are you actually sleeping? Do you struggle to fall asleep? Like all these things, like that doesn't mean you're sleeping. Like you're not sleeping well if those things are going on. So the approach that I want to, or the idea that I want you to understand is that one, we can always change our nervous system state. You're not doomed in that sense. But the other piece of it is that you're going to have to look at some deeper rooted things as to why, your body is under tension or your body is under stress in any of those 4 categories: mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And so I feel like there is a little bit of a disconnect of why people understand, or the depth in which they've gone into their nervous system work. Now, the interesting piece, like I said before, a couple years ago, I really started introducing the nervous system work into my work as an osteopath, like my therapy. And when I started doing this, I really actually started noticing, like, I believed, obviously, I was like, yep, nervous system, that makes sense. And then there was also, though, this piece of me that was like, this is really fascinating. There's a lot of women that are clearly stressed, dealing with a lot of physical symptoms. It's kind of hard to, I guess you could call it my intuition a little bit of when I'm dealing with clients, where it's like, you can tell there's something deeper rooted as to why they're in this position to begin with. Like emotionally, right? Like something that's kind of going on. I can't always tap into like what exactly that is unless I obviously have a conversation with them, but you can tell when there's just a little bit more beneath the surface, especially when it comes to disease and, these very long-term, conditions, or what people have been diagnosed with and that sort of thing. And I started to realize, like, women are really struggling with this. And this is kind of why I've decided to take a lot of my business with this in this direction, as well as like, creating my program, The Mindful Woman, to really help women kind of reconnect to themselves and their body and, put themselves first and be mindful about themselves and their health, right? I think it's a big thing as women. I obviously catch myself in this all the time, but, we naturally are very nurturing and we want to give and we want to help people. And we oftentimes put ourselves on the back burner, which leads to depletion. And it leads to us not having great coping skills, or just moments in our life where we give back to ourselves, right? It's like, who's filling our cup? We're filling everyone else's cup, but no one's filling ours, right? And I think this is a common theme. And I would say that the women who are very good at filling their cup have done the work to shift that, right? Like they're very conscious of that idea. And I feel like a big piece of obviously the women's health is that, in putting ourselves first and healing and working and just giving ourselves what we need, even if it's like a moment, right? The other piece that I feel is big is emotions. And when you're looking at the nervous system, the idea really is that, is it in a environment where it feels safe enough to let go or to heal, right? To be open to healing. A lot of times, like, we don't feel safe in our bodies, right? And that's, again, these signals are going off, right? The body doesn't feel safe. There's things happening, the body doesn't feel safe, right? We react certain ways. And that safety, like, we'll always choose we'll always choose familiar chaos. So even if you're like, I don't want to stay in this situation, right? Like, this situation sucks. Like, maybe it's like financial, or maybe it's physical, right? Like, maybe you want to like lose weight or whatever. You're like, I don't want to be this anymore. But why is it so hard for me to change? And a lot of times it's because that change that you're looking to make, the body goes, ooh, I don't know what that feels like, right? I can't go and do that. That's going to make us feel uncomfortable, and that's going to make me feel unsafe, even if it's a better situation. You're telling me it's a better situation, but I don't believe you. So your body has to experience, it's kind of like when you go to do something and you're like afraid to do it, but you kind of, it's like a presentation, right? You're going to make a presentation, you're all stressed and you're worried and you're nervous, and your body is just like, you're peeing every 3 minutes, and you're just like, right? Like, you're just kind of like really in this hyper sympathetic state. And then it's like you present and you're like, oh, it wasn't really that bad. But you can literally feel your body down regulating. You can like literally take a breath of fresh air, right? And that's like coming back down into that parasympathetic state. And you have to teach your body, like, it's like if you present enough times, you can teach your body that, presenting is safe. There's no threat to my life. Your nervous system's just trying to keep you alive, but we have so many mundane things that we stress about. And this is because your body doesn't know the difference between stresses. It doesn't know the difference between being chased by a bear or doing your taxes. Like, it doesn't understand the physiological response that we have in our body is the same. It doesn't discriminate. And that's why stress is such a personal experience, right? And that's why there's such a tie to our emotions, because we experience things emotionally. And depending on the emotion that we gain from that experience, it tells our body to respond in a certain way. Now, the thing that, I'll probably do a whole podcast on emotions, because it's super fascinating, I find. And for those of you who don't know, we hold our emotions in our body. And our emotions, basically what happens is we experience an event. There's an emotion usually attached to that experience. And our brain, let's say it's a negative emotion. Let's say there's like fear, right? Or there's even anger, for example. If you're so angry about a situation and it's literally going to drive your mind crazy, the brain will push it down. It will suppress it. And we literally talk about that. Like, I push my emotions down, right? I suppress my emotions, or they suppress their emotions, right? They don't show their emotion. That suppressing is happening in the body. It goes to the body, and there's certain organs that actually hold certain emotions. And so when you do it for survival, because you would literally go crazy, which is essentially what your brain is thinking. Like, I'm literally going to go crazy if I do this. I'm going to push it down, right? Like, I can't handle this in this moment, so I'm going to push it down. And then over time, if we don't release those emotions and we just kind of let it fester, things come up, our triggers come up, right? It comes out of us in certain ways. And eventually it will create disease. And when you break the word disease down, it's literally dis-ease, right? Your body is out of ease, which literally means it's not regulated, right? It's out of harmony. There's no flow, right? And in a nervous system state, it would mean that you're in one state of the nervous system and not the other. Like you are in sympathetic and you are having a really hard time getting out. Or you have triggers that really kind of spike your sympathetic drive. So it's important to know this because, I mean, again, from a healing perspective and understanding what you need to do to heal your nervous system, it's realizing like what's the thing that's driving my stress. Again, it could be super mundane. And it could be something that in this moment you're like, that's out of my control to change, right? A lot of times our lifestyles are a big stress, and the way that we're living is not really in alignment with our true essence of how we want to be. And those changes take time, right? We can't always just like quit our job and start a business, or quit our job and start a new job, or move across the world, or like, you know what I mean? Like there's so many things that those changes take time, but we can work on creating safety within ourselves and work on creating safety in our bodies. And that's where, again, going back to what I said in the beginning, like those tools that everyone usually gives out are super beneficial. But I think long term, we really need to, one, dive deep into the healing, but also acknowledge what are kind of maybe the long-term changes and shifts that I need to make to help myself be less dysregulated on the regular. So we want to be in this this parasympathetic nervous system state for healing, which is like our rest and digest. So, and in this biodynamics approach that I've been learning and diving into, the nervous system is actually one of the three things that we look at when it comes to like the state of the body on the table and us treating. So we have to help the nervous system be settled in order for there to be healing taking place, right? It allows the body, that's really what allows the body to self-heal. And I've had some really cool experiences just with clients of when they can take the stress out of their life, like not even necessarily the treatment I'm doing. Obviously the treatments help, but when they've changed their lifestyle and they've changed aspects of their life, they've had some really cool experiences with their symptoms where they kind of just like go away, right? Like it's pretty fascinating. And so it can be very simple, but the challenge is that the change can be hard, right? So when we're looking at, I know we're already kind of like 20 minutes into this, but there's a reason why you're in a state of dysregulation. And again, when I was listening to my mentor here, and his name is Jim Jealous, when I was listening to his audio, he said, disease is orderly. And I thought that was so fascinating because, he's obviously right, or at least in my eyes. Disease happens in, stages even. You can look at even the big C word, right? Like with cancer, there's stages, right? It progresses in a certain fashion. There's stages of the disease, right? And there's organization to it. Like there's a reason why your body is doing it. And it's actually usually doing it to protect you. Like it's usually a protective thing, as much as we view disease as very negative. But then the issue is we view it negative because we don't really ever look at like why it's there in the first place, right? So if we can kind of like take steps back, one, we can prevent disease. I truly believe that. I don't believe you're like just doomed in things. But you have to be willing to take a look at things, from a deeper perspective. Now, like I said, we need to create an environment where we are able to rest. Rest doesn't always mean sleeping. You can literally go and exercise and it can re-regulate you. So it depends on what you need and what type of stress you're experiencing. So I'm going to kind of go over some basic things you can kind of like look at when it comes to your nervous system and kind of like creating that safety that sense of safety in the body. So the first thing I want to kind of touch on is our routines. So our routines are obviously important. They do dictate, like, you know, if you wake up and you rush out the door and you're going to be in a very rushed, high sympathetic state, right? So now it's not necessarily bad. Like, people want to wake up obviously in the morning. We don't want to be lethargic and tired all day. But morning and evening routines have become very supportive in my world. And I know they've been very supportive in like a lot of people's worlds, right? What I encourage you to do is don't follow someone else's routine, which is, I think, the trap that people fall into. And then they go, the morning routine, this sucks, right? Like, it's so hard. This sucks. It's not good. It's not easy. And I think, like, one, we try to just like add 7 things to our morning routine all at once, and it's overwhelming, and it's half the shit wouldn't even support you because it's just not for you, right? So I think it's like really taking a personal approach to routines. I actually started with an evening routine. That was actually easier for me than the morning routine because I'm not really a morning person. I really like to kind of ease into my day and take a quieter approach to my morning. So I actually started with, very simply, actually, I have one of those like rise to wake alarm clocks kind of thing. So I actually turned that lamp kind of thing on. And it kind of has like an orange hue to it. So it's not so like bright white light. And I'll shut all the rest of my lights off and I keep that one on. And I just started like, you know, kind of being a little bit more in the dark aspect of my room. Obviously I could still read because that's what I incorporated. So I would sit in bed and I would read, and that was a way. I read novels at night. I do read other things, but I find the novels are really good for me because, I mean, I love reading. I really do enjoy it. So it's something that I enjoy to do. And as well, it's something that, because my mind is very active, it takes me out of my my world because I have to focus on that story, right? So I'm following the characters and all these types of things. And so I've found reading to be very supportive for me before bed. And then just recently, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you've seen that I've gotten a red light. So sometimes I actually turn that on now while I read. But I use it in the morning as well. And that's become my kind of like my one thing in the morning is I turn this red light on. I'll usually kind of sit in front of it, and I'll usually pull, you know, some tarot or some oracle cards for myself because I do enjoy to do that. And sometimes I journal. So the routine in the morning kind of changes for me. It kind of, again, it's just like for me to even do a morning routine is like, I'm like happy I did it, right? So I think that's the other thing too, is just giving yourself grace while you're trying to incorporate these changes. And if you miss a day, don't just quit, right? Because you're like, oh, well, I fucked it up anyway, right? Like, don't just quit because of that. Just pick one thing and do it, right? Try to make routines out of little things you do during your day, right? That you enjoy, right? I think that's the biggest thing. Again, when you start doing someone else's routine, you don't necessarily enjoy it because it's not the shit you like to do, right? Or you're trying to make it perfect. And now there's like this perfectionism piece that's coming into a routine. And that's just, it totally defeats the purpose of why you're doing it. Now you're stressing about stressing. You know what I mean? So routines is a big one. And this can, again, just creates that sense of safety. It helps us kind of, again, de-escalate that nervous system piece, like come into more of that rest and digest state. And the other piece, especially, and this is why I liked the evening routine, is it does help your sleep. So sleep is important. If you drink caffeine, I would say try not to drink any caffeine past like 2:00, or eat caffeine or whatever, whatever way you're kind of ingesting it. But again, that circadian rhythm is a big piece. And so we should be ideally sleeping by like 11:00 at night. And then women actually need more sleep than men. So getting 7 to 9 hours, if you can, of sleep. And, if you're someone who goes to bed late, I think like just, again, try to pull it back to like, if you go to sleep at 1, usually it's like, try to go to sleep at 12:45. Like, you know what I mean? Like, try to make an incremental step back instead of just like trying to force yourself to sleep at like 10 o'clock. And that's just probably not going to happen. So again, have grace with yourself, take time, but sleep is a big piece to having, I mean, just even experiencing rest, but also just sleeping well so that you're recharging your body, right? And you'll have a lot more clarity and stuff too when you're sleeping well, and you're not as like agitated, right? Irritated by things, that sort of thing. And then the third thing I would, and this is one that I would say I struggle with. I do live in the city, and so it's not as enjoyable sometimes to kind of like get outside, but getting out in nature is the third thing that I would say is key for our nervous system. And it's interesting, again, you bring like the health and the healing and the nervous system piece back to even that tree analogy I was using before. And it helps ground us. I mean, depending on how much you've kind of dived into nature and everything, but you know, there's interesting things. You even look at like certain pictures of trees and how it's, I don't know if you've ever seen these on the internet, but they're kind of cool of just how they mimic the aspect of like our arteries and our veins and you know, kind of like different, like the placenta, right, and the tree. And then we look at like our lungs, and there's little like trees coming out, like it's all little branches, right? So I think nature is huge, and it's interesting. Again, I was listening to this guy, and he was talking about how you know, we, like us, nature and the divine are what is whole, right? And they're like, again, there's this like, whatever you believe in, the divine, God, whatever you want to call it, right? That higher power, right? Those three things together are the wholeness that we are looking to create, but also I would say to connect to, really, because we have been so disconnected. So getting out in nature, I mean, obviously sunlight is amazing for us. Where I am, I'm in Ontario, Canada, and it is gloomy a lot. I mean, it's February right now, and you know, it's usually pretty gray. But even just, you know, getting outside, and it's cold, so it's not always enjoyable. I find it challenging just, again, I'm in the city, so there's not a whole lot of like nature really. But even just trying to get outside and take a breath of fresh air, right? It's just refreshing, even if you just sit in it for a little bit or sit in a window with some sunlight, right? But getting out into like actual nature, like a forest, or, you know, just, and not really forcing yourself to like necessarily do anything when you're there. Like obviously you can go for a walk or you can do all these things, but it's like maybe even you just sit, right? You just sit in nature. And so depending on your environment, you know, what you do might shift, but nature is a big one because nature really does help calm us, and we usually feel a lot better after being outside. We feel rejuvenated, we feel energized, we feel good, right? And we literally crave it at times, like being up in, you know, the northern part of the world. Obviously I'm not super north, but again, we do experience those gray days. It's like by the time like, you know, February and March rolls around, you're like just craving sun. And that's why so many people go on holidays, right? And so it can be very soothing for us, and it can be very supportive. And again, I think with the way our lifestyles have become, a lot of us are in boxes all day, right? We're in our house, we're in our car, we're in our work, right? But we're not outside. And so that is another way to like bring your nervous system down, because it's natural, right? It's a natural state. And so it's not all this superficial, artificial stimulation that we get all day. We get to actually go back into our natural state, right? So it's important. I don't believe that we need to like just cut out all technology and I think these things are actually very supportive for us. I mean, obviously I'm using it, but I think that it's about balance, right? And understanding what we need in certain moments. At some moments we can have more of the stimulation, and at moments we need more of the rest. And I think that the issue in society with our nervous system piece is that, and even just our health and our disease state of people and women, we're living in these hyper-stimulated worlds, right, that we've, created, and it's not supportive for us. And so we have to find ways to make it supportive for us. And again, that comes with putting ourselves first as women, especially, and giving ourselves what we need. And sometimes you might have to ask yourself what you need, right? Ask yourself, what does my body need right now, right? Do I need to have a nap? Do I need to stretch or move my body? Do I need to, go read something? Do I need to connect with friends or family, right? Like, what is the thing that do I need alone time, right? You don't have to regulate your nervous system only through meditation and breath work. You can do it so many ways. And there's no perfect way to do it because you're going to need different things at different times. So again, this is something that I heavily believe in, and honestly, I can see with just this biodynamic approach that I'm learning, I can see my view of things really shifting here as well over the next little while. And so I'll probably continue to bring this topic up and share just my perspective on, again, obviously healing in general, but this is a huge piece. And I would say if you don't feel mentally stressed, ask yourself, are you physically stressed? Do you have symptoms? Are you emotionally stressed? Which probably usually manifests in physical symptoms to some capacity, right? Are you spiritually stressed? Do you feel connected? Do you feel like there's a sense of purpose? Do you feel supported? Like all of these, do you feel that connection to the divine, right? Like there's so many different ways you can experience stress. And so also keeping your mind open when it comes to that. And use the nervous system as the tool. But there's usually a deeper rooted issue as to why you are, or a deeper rooted circumstance as to why you are in a dysregulated state to begin with. So obviously, if you guys have any questions, like if you're on YouTube, you can obviously comment below. If you are following me on Instagram, which I highly recommend you do, it just kind of get, like, you'll see all my updates. It's kind of where I put most of my things. You can obviously send me a message. But this, again, is something that I heavily focus on in my Mindful Woman program. So if you really are needing support and guidance on how and when and where I teach, so I have a curriculum that is going to teach you about the nervous system and kind of talk about the nervous system, as well as I give tools, and the tools I will kind of always continually add on to based on what people need. So there'll be kind of a vault of them that get accumulated over time, but there's kind of some basic stuff in there. There's obviously way more ways to work with your nervous system than what I just gave you, but those are 3 ways that you can literally change your nervous system state by not really spending any more money, right? So, and then the other piece is that I will kind of talk about this a little bit in the webinar. So if you do want to sign up for that, again, it's happening Tuesday, February 20th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. There will be a free replay, so you can still sign up and get that sent to you as well. So thank you guys for listening today. This was definitely a long one. This is why I started a podcast. So hopefully you found some information out of this and guidance and just maybe a perspective shift, or just seeing, your nervous system in a different state. Hopefully you stuck around and listened. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. And hopefully it wasn't all over the place. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Again, I hope that you have so much love on your healing journey, as well as, again, you get the opportunity to heal. You're with people who genuinely want to see you heal and not just manage your symptoms. So again, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.